Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. So I just wanted to show you all uh the Google Classroom. I uploaded this textbook here for y'all. You can access it at any time because I posted it this morning. And as usual, we have our course outline in the resources section. The quiz has been posted this morning. Oh, hold on. I forgot I'm supposed to be sharing my screen. Right. Here we go. So here, um, you would see recommended books. I only have one book so far. Um, I have others to post up and I'll let you know when I do, but most of it will go into session 5, which is the part 2 to this class. And if you have any issues with getting access to this class, let me know and I will send you an invite if the link isn't working. So here's the quiz as usual for you to do. There is no time limit for it. I removed the time limit so y'all could do it at any time and I would send a certificate for y'all after. Okay. And after this class, the recordings will be posted here as soon as the files convert.
Sorry, did you
So
say
this
you
is our
posted? Did you
outline
say you posted
of
it
what to
already?
expect for today's class. So we are going to do a little introduction on using medicinal herbs and spices throughout history and its safety aspect. Then we're going to do some digestive herbs and for boosting your immunity. And here's another book that you can get. I wasn't able to get it, The Herbal Medicine Maker's Handbook by James Green. But if you get it and you want to share it with the group, um, you can send it in the community group chat so everybody can access it. Yeah, so that's that. And then we'll have a Q&A session after. But if you have any questions at any point, feel free to do it. Okay, Sophia, here what I'll do. I would send you um I would have to invite you personally via your email. Uh should everybody who's getting issues to access the Google Classroom via the link that I sent before class, send it me a WhatsApp so I can individually send you the invite for it. Okay. So we know herbs have been in use from since the beginning of time. And these are some ways that it was like, sorry, these are the civilization that use the herbs and it has record of it being in use as early as 1500 BCE. You know, the Egyptians used things like garlic, myrrh. We hear about frankincense and myrrh around Christmas time, but it's something that they use a lot in the Arabian culture. Frankincense and myrrh is used a lot in medicinal treatments. And well, coriander. So we know coriander. We use it the seeds in our masala, in our curries, in our normal everyday cooking. Same thing with garlic. So in India, they developed Ayurvedic practices, which we talked about in our first class. And now we have the practices coming to Trinidad through indentureship when our Indian ancestors came and they would have brought things with them. So, people would have brought seeds. And because the indentured laborers had more freedom to practice their cultures than the enslaved people, they were able to grow what they had in India, which is why we have a lot of plants that they have in traditionally that would have been in India and used there for medicinal properties while you were cooking it. So there are different techniques that they would use to prepare the food And this is something that would have been passed down, in the matriarchal line, you know, because you traditionally, women were the one who were being taught these medicinal practices as well as the cooking techniques to pass on um throughout their generations. And it would usually be a community practice as well, because a lot of stuff would be done in bulk and would be done to share because of the amount of work that needed to get done. So, community was important. And that's something that we lack in now in modern day, because to do things for homestead, for home, it's very labor intensive if you have to do it by yourself. But if it is that you have a community, um, you will be able to do these things and share it, share knowledge, share hacks, share techniques. And usually people, would not have been able to read and write, but they can speak, they can share verbally, well, orally, these practices. But now we have a lot of books that is available. We have a lot of printed media, we have videos on YouTube, we have schools for all of these things now. Okay, so we had touched on China initially as well when we talked about the traditional Chinese medicine and how gatekept this is, even within the Trinidadian population. You don't really see Chinese people going to your health centers and hospitals, and if they do, it's usually certain areas that, and they gatekeep their practices because it's not just about treating the symptoms. Everything that they do is done holistically, and it can be dangerous to just pick and choose which techniques that you want to apply or which practices you want to apply. Now, it have some people who do it, right? But again, you have to take so much caution with it, because we don't get a foundational studies in medicine or any medical practices in our science courses in school, right? They don't teach you these things. So what happened is that you can have a lot of, people who are not educated and they don't know, and then you have issues popping up later of, contradictions, because you think, oh, it might work synergistically and boost how it works by trying to use too much things together, but you can't, right? Sometimes less is better. So this is the textbook that they have. It's very intensive and very hard to get in an English translation, and oftentimes things get lost in translation. So this is why you need to have somebody that you can consult with to explain the things that can have ambiguity, especially if you want to use it to treat clients. And we know uh Greece and Rome, when they had conquered Egypt and all the Arabian Peninsula and whatnot, we have our modern day medicine coming from that, with the Arabian roots from Avicenna. So we have our materia medica that can be found as well. So here we have to touch on the medieval period and the colonial era, where colonization basically starts when they were looking for spices, and we all know that how that stories go. We were taught about it in our class, beginning with the Caribs and Arawaks, and then for people who did Form 6 when you did Caribbean studies, it was changed to the Tainos and Kalinagos. And I was thinking, why don't they just tell us the correct thing from the beginning instead of giving us one information and then changing it like 10 years later? So for me, it's very interesting to learn, because colonization and the erasure of indigenous tradition go hand in hand. Um, because the Indians, even though they were colonized, they were still allowed to keep a lot of their practices. However, people who were enslaved, like the Africans and the indigenous communities, they lost all of their stuff. And I mean, we still have concentration camps, people surviving those things in Canada and even in the US, a lot of places where they have these concentration camps where they would steal the native people and basically whitewash them for society. And we had, I think it was recently, Canada had admitted to a lot of that activity happening where people were saying that their children were missing and they wanted their kids back. And now they are forced to live in places like reservations where they are ostracized and they become marginal members of society. So this is why they also gatekeep a lot of their medicinal practices because indigenous traditions are also linked to the spiritual practices. I saw this video this morning that I thought was so amazing. I think it was part of the Amazon, the Brazilian log people, the government gave it back to indigenous people because the logging companies had exploited labor and basically grazed everything, took everything. And this indigenous community was able to bring it back, you know, build back the trees, harvest food, medicine, everything that they needed. And, imagine if everybody was allowed to do this, to repair the earth and how much benefit we can get from it. Because there's so much information that we don't understand. And oftentimes people forget that the spiritual and the mind and emotions are all part of healing. However, these indigenous communities, they actually implement it as part of their treatment. So it is a very, that practice is like a very, very important practice, especially in holistic healing. Because like I said, herbal medicine is just one slice of the pie that is holistic medicine. And so one reason why they say that don't use white sage just so is because it's spiritually said to bring spirits. And if it is you think you're cleansing your space, remember Native American people, they call on spirits to talk to their ancestors or whatever their practices are. And oftentimes it could be malicious spirits or good spirits. But if it is that you decide, oh, I want to cleanse my space and use sage to smoke it out, but white sage is like indigenous and endangered species of the Native Americans. Why would you want to bring in a practice that does not belong to you, right? So that's why when you have to understand as well, not just getting the plant for holistic medicine, but what is the impact this plant is going to have on the community, the culture, and the area in, its presence in the world in terms of fauna and flora, and are you exploiting nature, and is that a practice that you're comfortable with? There are other things as well. So I'm going to touch on hoodoo. Now, hoodoo and voodoo came from the enslaved people. We know that Haiti and the French Creole have it. They have a lot of herbs that are linked to this practice. And a lot of people feel like these things are something that they are entitled to, and they try to practice it, and then bad things happen. So make sure and try to understand. Don't just take something with a grain of salt. Try to understand its history. Try to understand the culture. Try to understand how it came from. And I believe last week, the Wara community had some stuff in San Fernando. They hosted a herbal medicine workshop where they would show local plants. They gave you the scientific name. They gave you the patois name. And I think they gave you some native names as well. And they actually showed you the plants. They told you how to prepare it. It was a really nice interactive session. And so people who went to it, I'm not sure. I know I shared it in the group, but I don't know who else went to it. If it is that you learn anything and you want to share it with the group, you can do that. I know in Arima had their own thing like that during that time. So they would have shared a lot of information, from their culture for medicine. And it wasn't just medicine, they had other things as well too, like foraging, how to forage. They had art, culture, food. It was nice. So these are things that you need to consider when you're choosing your herbs to cook and whatnot. And then, well, we know modern, which has to do with our pharmaceutical companies that produce drugs, which we do need for a quick fix, especially if it is you've had a surgery or you have things like antibacterial uh infections and all of these things and you want a quick fix. Usually we know that we need our modern medicine for it. But chronic ailments should always be treated with um holistic medicine, because we know that these drugs have side effects and these side effects can affect and target our organ system and cause them to fail. So this is kind of things that we covered in session 1 already when we talked about the ethical and safety considerations. So we talk about dosage and potencies. We talk about making sure you do tests and you have the correct dosage. You don't want to use high dosage of things. So this is why doing that Materia Medica or doing your herbal monograph is very important, because because the herbal monograph is standardized already, you get a dosage that is already standardized to some extent that you can start with, or start with a lower amount and build up to the dosage that you need. So we talked about drug interaction having either decreasing the effects or having negative side effects. So we know St. John wort cannot be used with some pills because it can cause it to be inactive. We know some drugs can drop your blood pressure, raise your blood pressure. So these are things that you need to take into consideration when choosing what herbs you want to use. Especially, like I said, this is for your kitchen. This is what you're gonna cook with. So if you're preparing a meal and you're preparing it with the intention of it having nutrition and medicinal benefits, then you need to think, how is this working in combination and synergistically, or is it working against each other? So here we must always talk with a professional if it is that you have any questions or you want to talk to your doctor, you have a nutritionist, a dietitian, somebody who knows the information. Always reach out to them when you have questions. And as always, allergies and sensitivities. Now, foraging has its own risk with misidentification. And if it is people pay attention to our group chat, you see people send pictures and they would I think it was some herb that they were using. And you have your little report on what it is, correctly identifying it, how you're going to use it. So again, don't just take something and use it. If you know for sure that this is not it, message somebody, post it up. There are a lot of groups on Facebook that you can. There's Caribbean Herbs. I send the edible one, the 101 edible and medicinal plants. So like there are lots of groups that you can go and you can interact with. If it is our group and not giving you the information, there are other resources that you can get. So we talked about sustaining and ethically sourcing. So fair trade and ethical practices. This comes in especially where the local community you want to support them as much as possible. Same thing, over harvesting. You don't want to over harvest because you don't want the environment to be depleted to the point where it cannot regenerate itself, especially for endangered and wild populations where you are not actively doing anything to help the situation. So then don't be entitled to over harvesting for commercial gain. That is just something that you need to consider, and this is something that is a very important topic, especially when it comes to sustainability and economics with any sector, even with the fishing sector, that is something that, people need to pay attention to. So again, legal considerations, be mindful of what is being released. Be mindful if you have any side effects of anything. You know, we went through getting reputable resource suppliers and such. So this putting this as a reminder. Now, we don't have any issue with certification and licensing in Trinidad because this is not a community that is highly regulated, but a lot of people in Trinidad want to see certification and licensing, which there's no need for, but for some reason it gives them legitimacy in the eyes of a consumer. But internationally, some people are able to do it through their universities or programs that they offer. But it's something to look into, especially if you want to practice in terms of taking on clients and you want to become a herbal practitioner. And always make sure and understand what things that your person who you're making this for, whether it's yourself, your family, anybody, ask all the questions. They might not think that something is relevant, but ask questions, as much as questions, to find out what is going on. Because sometimes they might think it's irrelevant and omit it, but you want to get to know what is going on. So we know that herbal medicine gives you that tailored treatment. So we talk about cultural sensitivity when I talk about the indigenous practices, and then, well, record keeping. So record keeping, you can choose how you do record keeping, but thankfully we have the cloud or the internet storage where you can actually save a lot of things to Google or whatever it is that you choose to. So you don't have to keep physical documents. Now, there's always the downside of that where if something happened and you lose it, it'll have a backup. So if it is that you want to keep physical copies as well, at least you have both. So this is something that you choose what you want to do. It's also good to keep a history, especially if it's like within your family, and your kids, especially of what's going on with them, what you gave them before, what worked, what didn't work, what you want to try when they get older, see if it works, what they're allergic to, what they have sensitivities to, because oftentimes when you cook, toxins can be released when chemicals mix. The same thing with other herbal preparations. Food, especially food that may look healthy, can actually give out overlapping toxins, increase toxicity, and can actually poison you over time. So that's something that you need to consider when preparing your foods. Okay, so you will just come back in 10 minutes. Anybody have any questions?
Miss, excuse your morning again. I was looking at the myrrh, right? As one of the first herb that I saw in the documents
I
that
see
was sent.
Dinah.
Dina.
Okay, anybody?
You hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I'm hearing now.
Okay. What are there any do's and don'ts when it comes to myrrh?
To be honest, I'll have to do some research on that because I only know it as a spiritual practice and not something because it's a resin. I don't know it in the herbal practice way. I only know it's in the spiritual practice way.
Okay, well, I myself will end up doing some research with that as well then.
No
Because
problem.
I'm seeing that it's good for like burning frankincense and myrrh and stuff. This help with bacterial growth in your rooms and stuff like that now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's why
So,
when you're cleaning, it's good to open your windows and smoke out. We have black sage growing locally, so you can always use that. And when I attended the herbal medicine thing with the Wara community last week. Like people were asking about things to smoke out the area. And they said backstage was good because not only would it cleanse the space, but it would like get rid of mosquitoes as well. So, we have that issue in Trinidad with lots of mosquitoes that just seem to appear out of nowhere. So, yeah, that is also a part of it, like making sure that your space is clear. It's also good for aromatherapy. We will not touch on aromatherapy because aromatherapy goes in,
It's a huge
um,
topic.
yeah, and it also deals a lot with essential oils. So that's a whole different series by itself to go into aromatherapy.
The reason why I was asking about it in terms because that's all I see so far when I was doing a little research, nothing much. Just touch on something. I cannot really inhale smoke. So I'm looking at ways to dispel other. I use certain things as spray
Mm-hmm.
versus burning. So that's what I'm asking what applications we could use in terms of
Like humidifiers.
with the
If it's
myrrh.
that like because like it works with essential oils where you use water and your essential oils and kind of like the kind of steam the room or around yourself
Mhm. I
in
only ever know about the myrrh, the little crystals, the little resin. I've
right.
never known there were oils and so forth. So that's why I was asking.
So the essential oils for this gonna be like pure essential oils gonna be very expensive.
That is my next point I was coming to.
Yes. Because it is extracting essential oils is a very costly process, and therefore it is a very expensive product to get on the market.
And time consuming.
Yes, definitely. Any more questions? Okay. So,
Next question. I
yeah.
just wanted to say thanks so much for touching on that point of that the Chinese gatekeep their traditions, because I've always wondered how come they don't share stuff, because I've gone to acupuncturists and holistic healers previously for different ailments, and they're very, okay, they'll tell you what you need to do and that's it. But they
Mm-hmm.
don't share why. But now I understand why that is, because they see it as a whole,
Exactly. So if it
and
is you have to go by a traditional Chinese person, right? They're gonna take your birth date, your birth time. It's like you swear you by the pundits or by spiritual leader, how they're asking these things, right? Because they're
yeah,
gonna do your chart, they're gonna do your birth chart, they're gonna go through your chart and see where your planets of I touched on this before, your planets of detriment, exaltation, what is good for you, what is bad for you. They will do everything to see who you are as a person, which planets work for you, which plans work for you, which time is good for you, which is not good for you, what foods, because you should be having hot things or cool things or warm things. So for me, I understand it because that's something that I study, right? But it's not something that you can teach easily because
it's extensive.
it is extensive.
Miss,
Because
excuse,
it
I think
touches on herbal medicine, astroherbalism, or medical astrology. So what I did was the first classroom, you will see it have links for astrology, medical astrology. Y'all should watch it. They're kind of long, they're like an hour long, but it will help you understand a lot of why a lot of communities are closed off, in terms of how they practice. No, yes, the Chinese are taking over the world, but they are not sharing their information with us. You can see that they're not sharing a lot of technology. They're not sharing medicine. They're not sharing a lot of things. Now, the Indians are quite different. They will welcome you and teach you. You go to their schools, you can learn their yoga, you can learn their language, but that is why Ayurveda can spread so quickly. This is why everybody can adopt Ayurveda. But a lot of culture, like even with the indigenous, they will share, but a lot of it is spiritual. Like, how are you going to share the spiritual aspect to people who don't understand
Right,
your
correct.
culture, who wasn't grown in it, who wasn't these things are embedded in you from young, you know?
And they don't believe. If you don't believe in what
Yeah.
they believe, how can you understand it?
So a lot of people like religion, where you have a religious divide and they're not very open-minded. Now, this is not everybody, right? But it still exists that religion and spirituality go hand in hand. Um, Oftentimes you can't separate it if you are open-minded or how you are raised. If you are raised more liberal versus conservative, that really impacts how you interact with other populations and the information that you can get from them. Because if you're open-minded, you can ask the questions, right? You can ask the offensive questions. But if it is in an educational light, they will be willing to clear that up for you and give you that information that you need. But if it is that you're wearing the lens of you want to judge somebody and condemn them to hell, then I cannot learn from you if everything that we're talking about is that I'm going to hell, right? That is a conversation that goes beyond this class, actually. So yeah. So we have like 2 minutes again before the video cuts off. So any more questions?
Miss, I was gonna say before, that the reason why, and you touched on it as well, it's not so much of like a practice and more of a way of life for them. So they grow in it. So it's very hard to teach a way of life to somebody, like a full-grown adult trying to do something, or a baby trying to do something a full-grown adult supposed to be doing, that kind of thing. They have to
Yes.
steps they're taking to get to the point where they're at.
So if you have any time, there's this book. I'll try to get a PDF and send it to you all. There's this book called Eat, Pray, Love. Now, it's not like my favorite. I just read it. But the person in it is a white woman who basically goes on this journey and she ends up in India. And it is a real story that happened to her and they made a movie out of it. But basically, she showed you like how intensive it was to go to India and study the practices, like learn the yoga, learn the language, and actually be part of the classes. And this is what you were saying that, you have to live it to understand it. So that's why a lot of times you would see people saying, hey, we have these things going on in India. Even in our India High Commission, they have scholarships, they have things going on for you to go across and actually immerse yourself there. So that is also something that was kind of eye-opening for me to read that book. I like to read books by non-white authors because because you just learn so much more history and culture, from it. But if anybody know of any book that is similar to that book, Eat, Pray, Love, I think it's by Elizabeth Gilbert or something like that. Y'all can recommend it in the group chat as well. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. I'm just gonna end this class and then restart it and y'all can join back in.